Dubai, ever the pioneer in setting itself a vision for what it can be, has outlined some very clear ideas of what what kind of smart city should be. In a recent speech some months ago, Sheikh Mohammed outlined some ideas around some of the smart interfaces, the type of rich information, the type of connectivity, the kind of services that the citizens can have to benefit their lifestyle. And I think it's a very powerful vision because it is about the lifestyle. It is about the people who are living in those cities, the interactions that they will have for their everyday life, for their work, for the economy, for the travels and so on. It's a very long set of ideas. We will go through some of those in a moment. Now, to really put the different parts of a smart city together, you can imagine smart city goes much beyond the simple infrastructure of a city. It goes much beyond some of the government-led programs. A smart city, the building of a smart city really is a collaboration between private sector and public sector. Because there are many aspects of a smart city that are government-led. There are aspects of a smart city that are led by private enterprises. There are aspects of it that are related to economic developments. There are aspects of it that are related to the social infrastructure, that are related to the connectivity infrastructure, traffic infrastructure, the border infrastructure, and so on. So let me walk you through some of the areas that we are particularly interested in building trust for smart cities. For example, connecting people, harnessing connectivity, ubiquitous connectivity, and taking advantage of the fact that people are connected with their mobile devices, smart devices, wherever you go. Looking at ways to boost economic development, again, leveraging that connectivity, leveraging smart devices, having new smartphone-based services for commerce, for government services, for economic services. Improving the life expectancy for people. There are many day-to-day citizen services like healthcare, like other aspects of safety, home safety, road safety, that could and benefit a lot from trusted interactions. Of course, public services from the government, e-government services. These are part of what a smart city should be able to offer its citizens. Streamlining immigration is a big part of what a smart city should be able to offer for people who are visiting the country, people who are coming in and through the country, visitors and residents, very much tied to the e-government services, and promoting sustainability as well. We live in a time where we want to be smarter in the way we want to use energy. People want to have a better way of thinking about how they use paper, dematerialization, where they store data, what kind of data they store, where they store it, and the safety behind that. And of course, improving commuting experience, living in a city, commute, getting around the city is a very integral part. And it's one of probably the place that people first started talking about smart cities. But probably today, in today's world, people have expanded beyond the infrastructural discussions of how the city needs to the connectivity, to the smart devices, the services that people want. And this is where trust becomes very important. Because actually, unless you have services that people are confident about, it's very difficult to get them to adopt and get them to use again and again. Thinking about a little bit about what are those areas that can be developed. I think we all watch Hollywood movies, so it's not surprising what some of those futuristic use cases look like. But I think at the very beginning, I said smart city really starts from now. A lot of these things are not crazily futuristic. To harness the connectivity and mobility with smart devices, we all have smart devices already. And smart devices is more than just our personal handset. Take an example. In the vision set forward for Dubai, it talks about smart panels, smart information centers where people can gain access about the city all around Dubai. Cars are getting connected. We know the cars of the future, in the very near future, will have very rich interface, will have very rich connectivity to very interesting services. So harnessing those smart devices is one aspect of it, and it's very important that these smart devices have provide a certain level of confidence for the people who are using them, in terms of reliability, in terms of user experience, and of course in the sense that it has to be secured. Everything is going to cloud infrastructure. I think from a user perspective, it's really about the convenience and the ease of having easy access to your data, to your services. Everything's run out of the cloud. For people who are offering those services, whether you're a transport operator, you're a entertainment service provider, or you're a professional service provider, it is very important consideration for your CapEx, OpEx management. There's a clear cost advantage in going into cloud. And again, if you have your data sitting in the cloud, your confidence in having that data easily to be accessed, anytime, anywhere, and accessed by the right people, again, is a very, very important consideration. Governments are clearly modernizing very, very quickly. From the old days when you had to go to ministries and municipality offices to ask for certain services, we're quickly moving to a place where you should be able to access those services online, perhaps on your mobile, and only have to visit the physical interactions when you really need to be there in person. Everything else should be able to be done digitally. And again, to identify, are you the right person? Are you the citizen that you say you are? Are you the person who is the holder of that particular citizen? And are you accessing the right services? It gets more important as the services become more mission critical. When you get to a stage where you have some things like tax claims or voting, it becomes extremely important that people can be identified correctly. Aside from e-government services, another big part that governments are very much involved in a strong way is immigration. We know that Dubai is going to host the 2020 World Expo. So you can imagine the amount of the visitor traffic that's going to grow in the next coming years. In fact, I just saw a very interesting ranking very recently. The Dubai airport is actually ranked second in the world for the busiest traffic, a full year basis in 2013. It's right behind Heathrow, and it's well ahead of places like Hong Kong and Paris. So it's a very impressive amount of people who are coming into the region, transiting through Dubai, and will be coming to visit Dubai. Now, thinking about giving them both a very convenient and very smooth experience going through the airport, in and out, for the citizen, for the visitors, and also to have without compromising security, to have a very well set up system to know the right citizen, the right people are coming in and out of the country. This is the kind of infrastructure where a smart city would have in place. Now, closer to within Dubai, as you know, is it's a bit of a shopping heaven here. The number of malls that are in Dubai, the amount of consumer activity that's taking place, there's so many opportunities within Dubai that people could be doing for new types, innovative commerce. Easily imagine that mobile plays a big part in that, because a lot of people have mobile phones, people are going around, and there's a lot of innovation that's taking place around the mobile phone, both in terms of how else you can pay in addition to your traditional ways of payment, your credit card, cash, but also in terms of your consumer experience. Are there other aspects of consumerism, sharing, discovering about things you want to buy, loyalty programs that are going to change the way consumers interact with brands? Dubai, with so many malls and so many consumer activities, is really poised to develop very heavily around that as well. Another aspect of economic growth, not just for the consumers, also for the businesses here in Dubai. There are a lot of aspects of smart city that can leverage on the fact that everything is connected these days. We are no longer in the days where if you want to connect your plant or your factories, or you want to look at your logistical control, you will have to rely on old-fashioned cable connection. We live in a world where wireless connectivity is pervasive, it is cost-effective, and it's very available. You can do fleet tracking, you can do logistical management, you can introduce the next generation of industrial management. with the kind of connectivity and the smart management devices. But again, if you want to manage that well, companies need to be able to trust the data that's flowing back and forth. They need to trust the reliability and the scalability of the services that they are tracking. But again, one aspect to develop in smart cities. Within the Dubai cityscape, even between the different emirates, there are a lot of traffic systems that are being developed. You know, Dubai has some really great, very pioneering transport systems, as well as having a lot of people who are increasingly using some public transport and continuing to have more cars. Public transportation is something that is driven by very often government initiatives, government vision. And I think as part of the Dubai vision, it actually talks about a very integrated and a smart transport system. So again, in that context of having a very integrated and smart, central controlled transport system, whether it's for traffic or for transit, you can imagine how important it is to have a confidence around the data that you're using, the trust for people, for companies, operators, to know that the way the system is set up has thought out how data is flowing, how users, the commuters, how they're being treated. So I talked a little bit about traffic systems. Aside from the traffic central control, one of the big areas of innovation that's going on all around the world is cars getting connected. Only yesterday I was reading about the new GM car that's going to be launched in June in the US that comes with LTE connectivity. That's 4G connectivity. That you buy the car and you buy your subscription, your mobile operator subscription. The day is going to come very, very quickly when you will not connect to your GSM necessary for data. When you're in a car, you might just connect to the Wi-Fi that's in your car, and your car will be connected to wireless network to provide various things: maps, information, context-rich, augmented reality, perhaps advertising, maybe. And some very important applications that exist are things like emergency calls, things like breakdown calls, and so on. Those are kind of applications that have very tangible benefits for the people who are driving. If your car can automatically send out a distress call that tells your insurance or your emergency operator where you are, what's the status of your car, some basic stats about your car when you have an accident, it can make a big difference in saving lives sometimes. So those are kind of areas that a smart city can really develop itself. So it's, again, going back to why we want to have a smart city. It's about the citizens' lives. It's the citizens' lifestyle that they should be benefiting. Touch on one or two more last aspects before I talk about what it takes to get to a smart city. One other thing about life expectancy, there's a huge amount of development going around wearable devices. And if you follow some of the latest applications that people are speculating that are coming out or are already on the market, are around people's health, fitness applications. Not only are the next generation, young millennials, very interested in fitness and health, but as far as the wearable goes, there's a huge area of development for the elderly, for people who need medical care, to have remote health services. Remote health, whether it's for monitoring, whether it's for applying medical treatment, for following up on medical assessments and so on. There are a huge amount of application that's going on. Again, I think in the future of Dubai and the future of smart cities, we can imagine the connectivity, the smart devices, and the trusted services. Those are the foundation of offering very compelling home or remote or mobile health services. Talk a little about dematerialization. Sustainability is important. We want greener planets. Dubai is very, very conscious about that too. The amount of paper that's being used and how we're moving from traditional media on paper, on film, on DVDs, and on all kinds of traditional physical media to dematerialized digital media is moving very, very quickly. Consumers are putting all of their media online. It's all going in the cloud. Companies are putting their documents in the cloud that's easily accessed. So there's a huge push to dematerialize all those paper and all those physical media. And again, once again, to get that right, connectivity, smart devices, and trusted services is what's hinging around making sure that the service is very compelling. And of course, if we want to talk about sustainability, there's no way we're getting around talking about energy management. Energy management is a very important area. If you have smart grids that can manage the use of dynamic usage of energy, dynamic usage of electricity, and be sure that the service providers have a more dynamic way of charging people, providing better services, better monitoring, allowing the homes of the future, perhaps to buy peak hour energy charges and so on. You can imagine how important it is to be sure that this is well connected, reliable, scalable, and above all secure. So I've talked quite a bit about how important it is to have all these connectivity and having all those smart interfaces, rich, consumer-rich or user experience-rich interfaces, how important it is to be trustworthy. Dubai, in many ways, is already taking its first few steps on it. One of the interesting things that I discovered was that UAE has actually the highest smartphone penetration in the world. The smart devices in Dubai is very pervasive. People are ready to use it. At last year's GITEX, I saw some very nice applications coming from Dubai municipality that allow people to submit photos of some issues on their street. They want municipality to come and take care of it. They can send in a photo with a GPS coordinate and tell them what the issue is. So there's a lot of movements already making use of the smartphone that people already have to offer those services. We did a little survey actually here in Dubai on the Dubai consumers, and they clearly told us they were ready to use their mobile phone to do payment, to do ticketing, to do other types of services. It could be commercial, it could be couponing, and so on. And we've gone through Dubai Airport, so we know that Dubai Airport is moving fast in terms of modernizing itself. There are e-gates available, and we start to look at, in many parts all over the world, people are starting to look at how to use electronic passports, electronic resident cards to smooth the immigration process, and Dubai is no different. So many of these aspects people have started. You have the electronic ID here in Dubai, and so you have all these projects that are taking place that start to show you the first steps of those digital services and smart city services that will clearly evolve, grow, become even more pervasive, and actually introduce new innovative functions. What I think is very important as those new services get launched, get brought to the masses and made pervasive to everybody, is to think about how do you make sure that we build in the trust before everybody's using it. Because if you wait until all of the systems are implemented, everyone's using it, and then you discover that you got a weak username password way of accessing services, or you haven't really thought about where people can potentially hack into your services, or people who can pretend to be who they are not, it's very, very costly later on to come back and try to implement a layer of security. So it's very important upfront to say, well, if we want to use digital credentials to prove who people are, if we want to use smart interfaces to let people access information, if we want to store data and media in the cloud, if we want to let people to do remote health, remote commerce, remote e-government services, how do we check some basics like who is accessing it, who has the right to access what, and how do we go about checking that those things are not defrauded or those things are not hacked. It needs to be thought up ahead of time, because once adoption takes off, the big challenge is scalability. Once people start really adopting a service, the scalability of a solution becomes critical. The server in the back end, the accessee in the front end, and sometimes even there you might have a third-party actor who is helping to manage credentials. How do you make sure the channel in between those is well encrypted? That's sort of a general idea of what are the key points. You got to make sure that you have the right technology, you got the right encryption, you are making sure that you're putting in solutions that are state-of-the-art, in terms of latest security technology, encryption and so on, that are scalable, that are reliable, and that are robust. When I say robust, it means it is not stuck to one costly and very limited implementation. It has room to grow as the number of users grow, as technology evolve. And the best way to do that, to make sure that you are using the best technology, to make sure that it is scalable, it is robust, and as you go around the world, it's actually quite important to make sure that some of the services that you provide, perhaps payment services, you can use it not just here, you can use it elsewhere around the world. A couple of points. One thing I said is to use state-of-the-art digital encryption. Know where to implement it. Know when to use tamper-proof security. Tamper-proof, what I mean is that it is stored on a dedicated place. Whether it's in a device, whether it's in a panel, whether it's in a car. There are certain things you don't want to store on the open system, on the open software system. There are layers of security. You start at the very bottom, someone who's got username and password. Maybe you got a slightly better encrypted username and password. You got credentials that are stored in the open system, in the operating system of either it's a car or a smartphone or tablet. You got credentials that are stored in dedicated parts that are bordered off for sensitive applications, and it keeps going up. You got some different app implementations where you got secure credentials that are stored in the cloud. You got some secure credentials that are stored in dedicated chips. So you got to think up front to say, what is the risk of level of what we're doing? If you're doing a couponing application, it is not the same risk level as you're doing a payment application. If you're accessing some information about government services in general, just information, receiving information, it is not the same as you perhaps applying for a particular permit, renewing a driver license, for example. The level of security needs to match the sensitivity of how important it is to prove who you are. Clearly, aside from each service provider, a transport operator, a bank, a mobile operator, the government entity, each one of them providing their own services, a hospital, each one of them providing their own services. There are some times when you want to cross the services on different platforms. A bank may want to offer you payment services on your mobile phone. And in situations like this, or perhaps the government wants to make your citizen ID available for you to log into your bank account. It's one example of something that you can do. Or perhaps you want to use your bank ID to access your health record. When you have this kind of situation across platform, it is, again, costly and less efficient to have one-to-one relationships. Very often it is more efficient to have someone who is a third-party trust broker who can manage those digital credentials to make sure that the right person is accessing the right services. And so you got to think a little bit ahead to say, well, how do we find the entity, either centrally run by a public entity or private equity entities that can be that trust broker in the whole setup. Of course, ensure that the entire system being implemented is very robust. I talked about quite a bit. You know, some of those applications like the machine-to-machine, the Internet of Things applications, if you want to put in the system to monitor your power plant, it's something that needs to last for 10, 15 years. With technology changes, with climate that are beating on those systems, it needs to last. It needs to be robust as adoption grows. It's one thing to serve a handful of niche players or niche consumers, early adopters, trying out mobile payments. It's a different game to want to serve a whole city of people who are ready to use their mobile phone to pay. The volume is different. The type of service reliability and robustness is very different. And they all need to be secure. Because the one thing you don't want to have is a user who have a bad experience, losing some money, and would never come back. And finally, I think it's important to have an ecosystem. When I say ecosystem, what I mean is different players who can contribute. That's what I mean by ecosystem. And the reason why ecosystem is important is because it's sitting here, it's hard for us to project 10 years from now what kind of application, what kind of new application is going to come onto the market. The technology is evolving so fast. You know, wearable technology is just starting out. Connected cars, we're just seeing what is possible. One of the great things that we learned in the last 5 to 8 years with the smartphones is how powerful it is when you put a platform in place and let app developers dream and come up with their own ideas. Another very powerful thing is for different operators, transport operators, governments to come together and say, listen, some basic rules. Make sure that the credentials are well managed. Make sure that when you want to access certain sensitive services, you have this level of security. Those are the ground rules. But after that, let the innovation come from the market. Let the commerce, let the retailers come up with the next applications. Let the transport operator come up with the next applications. Let the car manufacturer come up with the next applications. But build that basic ecosystem so that it's easy for the other service providers to hop on. And the contrary situation would be to have very fragmented or very complicated systems that people cannot easily jump on. To put that in very concrete terms, is if you have very closed systems, that takes a lot of money and a lot of time for people to develop a way for them to include their... Think about a mobile app, your mobile phone as an analogy. If you didn't have a simple way for a developer to write applications, and each time they have to customize or develop a particular set of APIs to do whatever service they want, the speed of development was much slower, the cost will be very high, and nobody wants to develop new apps. It's the same thing with services for the people living in the smart city, except it's at a much grander scale, because it's not like someone launching a small smartphone app. These are very serious services that are impacting the people living in the city. So it's important to think ahead of time and build some ground rules. And in a way, this is where the government can play a role, because the government can come in, the government has come in with a vision. Dubai has a very unique context where the government has a very strong role to play in advocating what is good for the city. And in that sense, there's a lot of opportunity here for the government to think ahead in terms of saying, making sure that what are the ground rules that need to be in place so that the smart cities being built in the future really make sure the services are compelling, rich, that leverage on great connectivity, and above all, has the confidence of the users and the companies and the services to be trusted and used, therefore. Because in the end, if we're doing smart cities, when I say we're in everybody in this world. The governments, the companies, the vendors, the technology providers, and so on. The reason why we're all pursuing the services that should be implemented in a smart city is for a better life. It's for people to be able to trust the technology. There's a lot of people who are very, very skeptical about the technology you're introducing on a day-to-day basis. It is to make convenience for every day, for your commute, for your access to entertainment, for your health care, for all aspects of your life, for people to be more connected, right? For people to really fulfill the human potentials that they can have, for us to progress economically as a society. And in many ways, many governments and citizens around the world are very conscious about what it takes to leave a better future for future generations. So that's what's at stake, and it starts from now, really. So that's some thoughts I want to share with you about smart cities. Time-wise, I've gone a little bit over, but I'm available to take a few questions if you want, and you're very welcome to contact both myself and Gemalto to discuss a little bit more about what it takes to make sure that technology being implemented really provides trust for the service providers. Thank you.